Hello and welcome to the first episode of A Modern Pharmacist. Now, I've been pondering over this for a long time and I feel as though it's the only platform that will allow me to basically babble on about certain things but hopefully help people along the way. And the whole point of this podcast is to hopefully get out my inner personality, which is no nonsense, no fluff. And I feel like I've done not the best job really on all the social media platforms that I've got, and that's mainly because of the healthcare background. I feel like freedom of speech isn't really a thing. So the whole point of this podcast is to give me a platform where I'm not going to be effing and jeffing across everything, but just to cut through a lot of the nonsense and just get straight to the point and give people the true answers that they really want. So before I go into it, with it being the first episode, it's only right that I give you a bit of a background story as to who I am and why am I qualified, or why should you listen to this podcast. So for those who don't know, my name's Lee Smith. I am 32 this year and I've worked in the NHS, and it'll be 9 years next month, which is a long time. And I've done so as a pharmacist, and I've worked across all areas such as hospital, I've worked across industry, community pharmacy, and now the longest stint within a GP practice, coming up to 5 years, I think it is. So I've got a lot of experience across the whole healthcare sector. But not only have I seen that as a healthcare professional, I've also been a patient. So when I was 9, I got diagnosed with a very uncommon or unfamiliar form of diabetes called glucokinase moldy, which has obviously been with me for a long time, and there wasn't really much guidance on it, and I just feel like I've had to navigate that. And luckily enough for me, I've been within healthcare and been able to sort of figure out for myself what I need to do. But there's so many people out there, especially within the UK, that rely on the National Health Service, and they don't really get the level of care that they need or the level of care that they expect. But fortunately enough for me, I've seen it from both sides. And just going a bit more into my story, so when I qualified as a pharmacist, I was working within a hospital sector. So that is pretty much, people come in acutely unwell, you get them back on the feet, and then they go out the door. And it's quite rewarding in the sense that you actually help people come in and out the doors. But I'll go into this in future episodes, but modern healthcare now is not fit for the population, and the way in which we govern and treat patients is just substandard. And I've had so many interactions with health professionals over the past few days and obviously over the past months, whilst I'm doing a lot of social media. I'm just trying to navigate this. The only way I can say it is mafia, really. And I feel like healthcare and the environment is a mafia-led place because, like I said earlier, you don't get freedom of speech. If I was to go out here now and tell people to do certain things, call out certain people, certain professions, there would be my governing body and then other ethical and standards that are held against me. And even though we're not sued in the UK, within a couple of months, I'm pretty sure I'd be removed and struck off the register. So is that freedom of speech in a free country? I'll let you decide that. I don't think it is anyway. And that leads me on to who is this podcast for? And a lot of people might look at the title and the artwork and think it's just for pharmacists or it's just for healthcare professionals, but that's not the case. I'm going to try and, yes, I'm going to bring in a lot of healthcare subjects, case studies, a few things about healthcare politics, but I'll try and explain it in such a way that the average person who's not medically trained can understand it, because I feel this is who my target audience is. It's not necessarily those who are in the NHS, because as much as a lot of the people in the NHS are good and they've got good incentives, I just feel like they're blind in terms of what true healthcare is and what's actually going on with the world, which is why I wanted to set up this podcast. Because once you do your degree and you go into whatever environment it is, let's say hospital, you're governed by guidelines, there's hierarchies, and you don't really step outside of that because they get paid okay. Again, it's nothing to write home about, but I feel as though you get brainwashed when you're within them environments when you step outside of that. And this is another reason why I wanted to try and be a no-nonsense podcast, because I come from a family where my family have basically set up businesses within construction, landscaping, building, basically you name it. It's nothing to do with healthcare or going through university. And the way that they conduct their business, so for example, my dad, he's probably not going to mind me mentioning this, but he has his own building and landscaping company with my uncle. And if they don't agree with someone or they don't agree with how something's being done, they can say whatever they want and deal with it in whatever way they wish to. And when you work with them, which I still do on weekends, it's liberating to just be with them because you can take the mick out of people. You can, like I said, you can call someone whatever you want, or there's just no boundaries. And when you take a step away into my normal job where I'm sort of governed by the patients and the patient's always right and all these other things, you're just not able to completely, you feel as though your wings are clipped if you were a bird, and that's the only way I can put it. So I wanted to try and create a platform where a lot of people can come to, get really good information about healthcare, because that is one thing that this podcast will have is I specialize within cardiology and metabolic health, and I've done this outside of the usual GP practice and all the other courses because, if I'm being honest, I've done a lot of diplomas through the healthcare system. A waste of time in my opinion. You literally turn up there, it's a tick box exercise, you don't learn anything, and it's just giving you the legalities to do a certain thing. So this is a bit off topic, but as a pharmacist, you do your 4-year degree, you get your qualification. So I got a first class honours because I wanted to get the best mark I could. The reality is, my mum and dad said if I'd done so well, they would go halves with a car payment for me on the one that I wanted. After that, you do a year in practice, so hospital I picked, and then at the end of that, you do an exam, which basically determines whether your degree is void or not, and you get 2 attempts, I think. Obviously, I passed first time, got a really good score, and then you come out as a qualified pharmacist. But the only people who can prescribe when they come out qualified are doctors and dentists. Now, I don't agree with anyone having the ability to come out once they've qualified and prescribe, because it's such a minefield. There's so many things that you have to think about. So I don't agree with any professional having to do that. So you have to do an advanced course if you're a pharmacist, nurse, or any other allied health professional, and it's your non-medical prescribing. So I done mine last year, and literally it was 6 months. The teachers on it were really good, by the way. This is not faulting them because they're following a curriculum, but you come away from it and you think, I literally didn't learn anything in that whole course. The course was about how to read a BNF, which is the book that we use as pharmacists and healthcare professionals to prescribe medication. Our degree is basically built upon knowing every medication that you possibly can, how it works, when not to use it, how it interacts. So to do a non-medical prescribing course on basically how to use this book was completely a waste of time. And that's why I don't go for any courses within the healthcare system anymore. Like I said, I had to do 2 diplomas. I've done this prescribing plus my degree. So anything that I talk about now is all directly from the professors, whether that be Canada and America seem to be leading quite well in these areas. So I've done a lot of research around that. And the reason I've gone into so much detail is because, like I said before, I do have diabetes, and I'll probably have to come on to it on another podcast, but I was basically left by the NHS to find my own treatment. I was discharged, even though it made no sense not to. And it's just frustrating because as a taxpayer, a high taxpayer, I don't look for the NHS as a point of care. I get no extra benefit from working in the NHS and nearly doing so for 9 years next month. I go to the private sectors and it's just an absolute mess where we are as a country. And I don't feel as though the healthcare system's going to be in the next 5 years, because I don't think everyone says, oh, it's a good thing. I used to believe that. And that was one of the reasons that when people used to say, oh, should you move out to Dubai or Spain? You go, oh no, the National Health Service is a really good asset. On paper, it is, and probably back in the 40s and 50s, it probably was, but not now. The way it's abused and the way that the level of care that's given within the system it's pretty poor. There's no way around it. It's horrendous. And I would love to know where I was going next with that, but that's obviously the thing that I need to learn. Being on your own and having no cue cards, no script, is going to be something that I'll have to navigate. But I feel like it was me talking about why I go into the details that I do, and also why it's going to be beneficial looking at this, is because a lot of the information that I'll probably share in this podcast won't be mainstream. It won't be known by your GPs. It won't be known by probably a lot of consultants. And the added thing that I always try and say is that I'm actually living it at the same time. I would never advise anyone to do something that I've not done or I'm not willing to do. And that's a key thing as to why healthcare is losing a battle with personal trainers. That's not me having a go personal trainers, by the way. Obviously, I feel as though everyone has their own place. But a lot of people in the UK especially are more inclined to go to a personal trainer for advice and help. about their health than to go to a healthcare professional, because let's be honest, 95% of healthcare professionals look like they've literally just got a subscription at Mackey's, don't go out the house, and just completely leave themselves to neglect. So I can understand why. And another motivation is that pharmacists are greatly underrepresented within the media. And I don't believe every pharmacist has the ability to go and do certain things. But when you watch a program of the morning and you see a doctor talking about medication, imagine if a pharmacist went on there and started talking about diagnoses or pathophysiology. They'd be like, oh no, that's not your remit. It's not a doctor's remit to go through medication. That's our bread and butter. I see it every single day. Most doctors can't prescribe or know the interactions with medication, and they shouldn't do, because that's our job and they didn't specialize in that. So there are so many motivations for me doing this podcast, to give a voice, and I really hope that I get across the no nonsense nature, and I will have to work on that, because like I said, if you say stuff normally, you're normally penalised and you're not able to freely speak what you want. But at the end of the day, and I say this to every patient at the end of a consultation, is that if you want to go through your medication or your health again, book in with me, because I've got nothing to gain from lying to you. I will give you the most transparent answer, and I'll probably give you a lot of common sense as well, which is something that is greatly lost within the world of medicine now. There's no common sense. There is no desire to practice genuine science. And what you learn throughout your whole degree, I feel like it is just a very, very volatile landscape at the moment. And I don't feel like it's helped since COVID either. I feel like that was really the point at which a lot of people started to look at healthcare professionals and look at the national health system. And I always encourage people to do so. You should always question, regardless who the person is, no matter what sector, what you are doing, if it implicates you, especially if it's about your own health and doing stuff to your own body. I always encourage people to do that. However, it is finding a balance between being disrespectful and questioning someone's ability, or intention, is probably the best way. But before I finish this podcast and before I ramble on, which I'm conscious of that I probably have, because like I said, I've got no cue cards. This is purely non-scripted, like a lot of things that I like to do anyway. But one of the big motivating factors outside my personal health was my dad, for example. Well, he is the example. He had a heart attack at 50 and at 51. And he didn't go to the GP, despite being a taxpayer and despite being someone who kept himself to himself. He didn't go to the GP because there was no need to. There was no call for him to go. And this was old guidelines. This was old practice, I suppose. And when he turned up at 50 with the worst type of heart attack that you can have, it's called a STEMI, which stands for ST elevated myocardial infarction. Basically means that his arteries around the heart were fully occluded, meaning no blood, no oxygen was going there. And ironically enough, it happened the day that he was doing an extension for us. He was building a gym actually, and it happened in front of us. Luckily enough, it was in front of us. We got him the right things. Ambulance come in no time. And that is the fortunate thing about being within the Liverpool area, is that yes, public health around here isn't the best, but we've got some of the best hospitals that you can ask for in a very, very close proximity. But he went there, and prevention was never a thing that ever entered his mind. Yes, he knew that he needed to maybe stop drinking alcohol to the levels that he was after work. He needed to do a bit more activity outside his basic basal activity at work, which it's quite hard to tell to a lot of people, especially within the north of England, because a lot of people do have manual labour jobs, and it is a lot better than what we do day to day. In terms of my day to day has been 50 minutes of intense activity, a 50-minute walk, and maybe an hour cumulatively stood up. The rest of that time I'm sat down. I'm sat down now doing a podcast, whereas he's up at least 10 hours a day, really sitting down. And trying to tell someone to be a bit more active, it's hard for him to understand, but he now grasps the idea that you need to be a bit more targeted with your approach. But apart from the basic things, he's never smoked. He didn't really know what prevention was. And if the NHS would have set it up where he had maybe a blood test every 5 years, his blood pressure done a bit earlier, just a bit of interaction with the health system, maybe this wouldn't have come on in the manner that it did. Now, when that happened, my mum was away on holiday. We did say not to tell him, and then my brother, he blabbed basically. He can't hold his own water, that kid. But if he ever listens to this, But the thing is, that was very traumatic. It could have ended another way. Could have ended where we were saying bon voyage to my dad, and my mum was without a husband and without an income as well. So many things to it. Now, this is another, and my mum, by the way, I will mention her. She's had her health struggles. She's had cancer. She won't mind me saying, in the early 20s, a very severe form of cancer. She's then had a hysterectomy in the early 30s. She's had a lot of health complications, but the way the health system is set up is that you are only, it's like a child and an adult. You only speak when you're spoken to, and that's like the NHS. You're only treated when you're sick. And I feel like that's the whole model that's wrong with this country, is that we should have some form of input at certain stages. And it was a motivating factor to do a lot of the things that we've done, was from that family experience, to say how someone that you've seen all the time as, and kids do, even though I'm obviously intelligent enough to understand my dad's not indestructible, to see someone who, especially my dad, a man of his word, in construction, does everything, proper man's man, to see him just near enough be taken by a heart attack was a sobering thought, really. And then, because I work in healthcare, you think, how can I affect this? And when you look at all the other things, I was thinking, we're just not doing enough, and there's not enough information out there. A lot of people, like I said, who I'm targeting with this podcast, may be not aware of a lot of the things that can happen. So I'm hopefully trying to change that, and trying to be that bridge between healthcare professional, someone who's a patient, but also the general public. And that's the issue. Like, I live within Knowsley, which is classed as one of the most deprived areas within the UK. I think England, maybe the UK, I'm not too sure on that. But the point is that I'm trying to build a very health conscious community. And when doing that alongside a financially deprived and a health deprived area, it really is such a stark contrast. And we always joke about it, me and my wife, because she's also a pharmacist, that we're trying to do this, and anyone else who's within healthcare probably never has these comparisons. They normally come from families who are doctors. They normally live in affluent areas, so they never see the big disparity in health, and we see it every single day. So it's not, there's more motivation to that. It is to give people just a bit more clarity, and the only way to do that is by doing it in a sense or a way where it does cut through all the crap. And we were talking, I'm going to end on this comment really, but we were talking before about this freedom of information. Like, every patient should have access to their own information, which I agree with. Everyone should. And one of the family members just had an MRI. We can't get access to that, which is ironic, because we could probably interpret it to some degree. And I feel like a lot of things have been missed. It took 3.5 months for a report to be written up, which again is substandard. And then the actual consultation. So we always critique consultations because it's what we do, it's our day job, and we see, has this person conveyed confidence to us? Have they given us a good plan? Do we actually have a better idea now than before the consultation or before the investigation started? Basically, this person got a consultation. It was poor. There was no way around it. The lad didn't really know what he was talking about. There was no confidence. I felt like he was just a bin lad who basically didn't know anything about healthcare or medicine. And the end result was, you just need to go on medication, but no diagnosis, which you're sitting there thinking, well, is this something sinister? Is it something that is going to resolve? Or is it something I'm going to live with for the rest of my life? And ironically, as pharmacists, me and my wife, we don't want to give people medication. We want to give them the opportunity to do the basics, which we preach every single day, that will give you probably 95% of your health return. So this idea of going on long-term medication, and especially knowing exactly what type that they mean, it'll be more of like a gabapentin, a pregabalin, a nerve agents, where once you're on them, they're hard to come off, and you're merely masking a symptom. You're not getting to the source of the pain, which I think should be paramount in every consultation. What is the cause of this situation we're in? If we can stop that, then that's going to solve a lot of the issues. But people in healthcare, for whatever reason, is it because we are scared of being taken to court? Is it because of a fear factor of, I don't know. I honestly don't know what it is, but we just beat around the bush, and there's just no direct answer. Like, if there was something wrong with the MRI, just tell us, we think it's this, it doesn't sound good. at least we can process it. And I feel like that's where healthcare in this country has definitely gone wrong, or going wrong, is that healthcare practitioners are taking the decision out of the patient's hands. And there was a big move towards patients having more say in their care. And I agree with that to an extent, until it comes to a point where they're telling me what to prescribe, where I feel like that's a very grey area, and I'll come on to that in later episodes. But when a practitioner is holding back information because of fear of it being misinterpreted, or they feel as though the patient may not be able to handle it, I don't feel like that's a decision they should make. That's the decision that a patient should make, and you should have all information with regards to your health. And if I was to say I know exactly what I've talked about this podcast, I would be lying, because I have no idea. I just know there's a timer in front of me, so I put it there because I don't want this episode to be too long, because it is just an introductory one. Going forward, I would like to stick to like a weekly podcast. I mean, knowing me, I'll probably pump out 2 a week, because that's the sort of personality I am. I like to fixate on something and try and improve in every way, shape possible. And the next one I'm going to do, I've sort of thought of the title already. It's going to be Why Modern Healthcare is Doomed. And that is, it's got a good concept. There was an altercation that I had with another consultant actually today, which I feel like it only needs to come out on a podcast, and I need to explain it and see whatever everyone else thinks and what other people's thoughts are, because when you're within this system, it's a bit different now. Like I said, I was so tempted to comment back like, that's a load of rubbish, you know, and literally what are you talking about, all them things, but I didn't. I refrained from it because it looks very unprofessional from me. So I thought, you know what, I'll go and do a podcast. What better way to talk about it? But if you've got this far, thanks for watching or listening to this first episode, and hopefully you get a lot out of the future episodes. If there's anything that you wish for me to discuss, if there's anything you want to challenge, I'll probably do an episode where people have challenged me and I'll go through it, because at the end of the day, I'm not right about everything, and I don't believe anyone is. So it's all about perception and how you can work around things. And the end result for me is, at the end of this, is to improve preventative health, improve people's empowerment and knowledge on their own health, their own ability to seek out disease and conditions, and just give them a bit more confidence, because in a world where not many things are certain, having confidence in the one thing that is going to drive you forward, which is health, which is the most important thing, is just something that's a nice reassurance to have. Anything we've discussed in this, again, it's for informational purposes only. I've got to do a nice disclaimer. It's not medical advice. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching or listening.